because simply put, there are far too many families in our community who are struggling to access childcare options. Our major towns are not inaccessible backwaters, but they are placed at a disadvantage when it comes to childcare. The lack of childcare facilities are preventing parents from returning to the workforce at a time when the cost of living is rapidly rising. And this is a real handbrake on our community and places a hurdle in front of young people who want to raise their family in the country. Some of the issues raised in the responses include a multi-year wait list, a lack of childcare providers in their town, and families relocating to other areas to access better childcare options. The responses shared overwhelmingly negative experiences, with 100% of parents who shared their experience said they had been adversely impacted by the lack of available childcare under this government. Some of the responses from this survey have been truly disheartening. Jodie from Benalla said, "The centre my son has been at this year has just announced on Friday the 22nd of December it will permanently close its doors. They can no longer find staff and therefore cannot have the number of children to make the centre financially viable. The lack of staff has meant that I have had to pick my son up early on certain days, find care when the centre has had to close unexpectedly. I'm a single mother who works full-time. The pressure on me is huge and I have had to lean heavily on my mother and sister to help me through this past 12 months. Another parent said, "There are no spots and the wait list is 12 to 18 months long. I have had my two on the wait list for 8+ months and no sign of a spot anytime soon. We are struggling financially while not being able to access childcare for our kids." Another local mum, Isabel, said, "There is no access, there are no spots available." Madison from Avenel told me that I was on the wait list for months, nearly a year, for 4 different childcare centres, government and family daycares. I couldn't go back to work. I nearly lost my job due to not being able to go back enough days. Finally, I have care, but not in our hometown, which is nearly an hour each morning and afternoon for drop-offs and pickups, which adds financial strain. Beck from Euroa told me that when I had my first, I popped her name down at the only childcare centre in Euroa at 4 months old, and I was told there was still a wait list. She's now 2 and she's still unable to get care. She said the family daycare options are all booked up. I've heard at playgroups that a lot of families have moved out of the district because there is no childcare at all. We have women waiting in foyers of childcare facilities, seeing if a sick kid has opened up a space for their own children. I had a constituent from Broadford call my office last week and explain some of her concerns with childcare in the region. Broadford has a 1.5-year long wait list for their childcare facility, meaning that this teacher was unable to return to work anytime soon. Due to the wait list, facilities in neighbouring towns were looked into as a possible option, but sadly these towns are suffering with similar problems. Broadford is on the verge of a massive expansion, yet infrastructure in the town is not matching this pace. On top of issues with childcare, this local mother pointed out there are still issues with the number of doctors and dentists, meaning that kids were being left behind. While the government has made ambitious promises to increase the number of childcare facilities in our state, we are failing to see a coherent plan or any real progress. The early childcare centre promised for Seymour will not be built anytime soon. The Labor government choosing to not include it in the first round of centres being established is heartbreaking. The Labor government choosing not to include Seymour in its first round of centres being established is heartbreaking and reflective of how out of touch it is with the childcare crisis that is plaguing our state. The recent promise to establish a new early education centre in Seymour is a clear example of the empty commitments that align with election season. The misleading deadline of 2028 for the Seymour Childcare Centre's delivery shows a lack of genuine concern for the immediate needs of the community. Despite the region being regarded as a childcare desert under this government, there has been a disregard for regional families who need reliable and affordable childcare now. A 2022 report from the Mitchell Institute showed the Aurora electorate had a number of childcare deserts, meaning areas that have less than 33% of childcare places available for children in the local community. I might repeat that figure for those that are not listening. there are less than 33% of childcare places available for children in our local community. The report showed Seymour, Benalla and Kilmore, Broadford were some of the areas struggling the most, while smaller towns such as Murchison, Rushworth, Toobrack and Reedsdale had no childcare at all. So far, there have been no commitments to fund a childcare centre in the electorate other than Seymour, which remains without a set timeline. There are many women angry about this false and misleading promise, and I am one of them. Towns like Avenel and Nagambie are still in desperate need of more childcare options, whereas smaller towns like Murchison, Rushworth, Toobrack and Reedsdale have no childcare at all. While the safety and wellbeing of children will be improved by this bill, the Labor government remains happy to seemingly disregard this in other areas. Thank you to all the childcare providers, school crossing supervisors, parents, babysitters and teachers doing an amazing job caring for our children. The safety of our children is and always will be the priority, and it was about time the government realised this and stepped up to the plate.